Please be careful before watching this. This is just for fun and learning. It all started with a moment so strange that everyone in the courtroom couldn't believe their eyes. Richard Rawlings, the super famous guy from the TV show Fast and Loud and the boss of Gas Monkey Garage, had just heard the news that would ruin his whole life. He was going to jail for 15 years. He couldn't leave for at least the first 10 years. The courtroom got super quiet as Judge Alanir Simmons read out what was going to happen to him. Rawlings, who used to look cool and in charge, now sat, bent over with messy hair, a wrinkled shirt, and empty-looking eyes. Then, out of nowhere, he fell forward with his face hitting the table in court, and then he slid down to the floor. People gasped out loud. His ex-wife put her hand over her mouth because she was so shocked. Dennis Collins ran up to help, but security guards stopped him. Doctors rushed in and worked on him for 7 long minutes. When Rawlings finally woke up, he looked really pale and sick. Instead of putting handcuffs on him, they rolled him out on a hospital bed with an oxygen mask on his face. The guy who was once known for drinking beer, acting tough, and burning rubber with fast cars now looked like a ghost of who he used to be. And this was just the start of his fall. For many years, Richard Rawlings seemed like nobody could touch him. He wasn't just some car guy, he was the car guy. The loudest person in any room, the biggest personality you'd see on your TV screen, the man who made buying and selling cars fast, doing cool burnouts, and making million-dollar deals look super easy. Wearing his hat backwards, acting like a rock star, and always holding a beer, he turned Gas Monkey Garage from just a shop in Dallas into a brand that people knew all around the world. The TV show Fast and Loud made him famous everywhere. To his fans, he was the real thing. Honest, unfiltered, and totally Texan. He created stories about himself. He was the man who found special cars that nobody else could find. He would pull million-dollar classic cars from old barns and garages like they were just sitting there, waiting for him to discover them. What he said was like the truth in the car collector world. If Rawlings said a car was rare, people believed it was rare. If he said it was real, buyers didn't match up, and a few stories about buyers who couldn't double-check what they bought. But because he had a national TV show, more and more fans every day, and companies wanting to work with him, those whispers got covered up by how loud and popular the Gas Monkey brand was. Rawlings was everywhere you looked. He wasn't just fixing up old cars, he was bringing back legendary cars, and he sold the dream better than anyone else could. But dreams that are built on shaky ground don't stay standing forever, and in late 2023, that ground would break open right under his feet. It didn't start with police putting handcuffs on him or a SWAT team breaking down doors. It started with paperwork. In late 2023, the IRS started what was supposed to be a normal check into Gas Monkey Garage's money records. Just a few small things that didn't match up in their reports every 3 months. This happens sometimes. No big alarms going off, no newspaper headlines. Just an accountant asking questions and thinking they'd finish everything in a few weeks. But those questions led them to find warning signs. Business expenses didn't match what the company was showing to the public. Menstrual were written down as car parts. Fancy flights were hidden by calling them transport trips. Personal cars were labeled as cars for sale, but were never actually sold. And then there were money transfers to other countries that were never reported. It wasn't easy to see at first. Rawlings's money records looked neat and organized, too neat actually. But special accountants who investigate crimes started pulling at loose threads, and the more they dug deeper, the less it looked like messy bookkeeping and more like a carefully built fake system. Then came the VIN number. One car, supposedly a restored rare vehicle, was sold for over $400,000 and caught the attention of the people checking the records. The VIN didn't match any known group of cars ever made. In fact, it didn't match any car maker's records at all. It was like a ghost car. Investigators followed the clues, tracking the sale through fake companies, wire money transfers, and forged paperwork. What started as a basic problem with a tax form had now shown something way bigger. They weren't just dealing with wrong money statements anymore, they were looking at lies, fraud, and possibly crimes. The IRS sent the case to the Department of Justice, which handles serious crimes. That single VIN number mistake wasn't just a one-time error. It was like a door, and when investigators opened that door, they found a whole network of lies behind it. When federal investigators raided Gas Monkey Garage with a search warrant, they didn't just find tools and old muscle cars. They found a system, like a machine built to trick people. Hidden behind locked doors, away from the TV cameras and production workers, was a part of the shop that wasn't shown on any building maps. It was a room filled with laser etching machines, really expensive printers, and VIN stamping equipment. According to federal documents from the government, this was the main center of Richard Rawlings' secret operation. Over almost 8 years, Rawlings and a small group of workers he really trusted had supposedly changed the identities of dozens of cars. Regular, medium-quality classic cars were turned into high-value rare cars. Fake paperwork, dealer bills, build information sheets, and even historical ownership records were made up to support the lies. These cars were then sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars, often to people in other countries, which made the crimes cross borders and federal crimes, and they were all shown on television. Episodes of Fast and Loud were played in the courtroom as part of the evidence to prove he was guilty. In those episodes, Rawlings could be seen showing off unicorn finds, which means super rare gems with almost no paper trail to prove where they came from, but they looked amazing. The lawyers trying to prove he was guilty argued that the show wasn't just entertainment. It was advertising. It was a cover-up. The jury members watched clips of Rawlings describing impossible backstories for the cars. Cars that were owned by celebrities. Cars kept in garages for decades, found against all odds, one after another, always at the perfect time, always for sale right after filming. Then came the expert witnesses to tell. Built a garage. He had built a big lie. What really sealed the case against Richard Rawlings wasn't just fake papers or messed up VIN numbers. It was the testimonies from people inside his own empire. 3 former Gas Monkey garage workers came forward, and each one told nearly the same story. And what they revealed was really damaging. Deep inside the shop, past the well-lit filming areas and the workstations that the public could see, was a section of the building that wasn't on any floor plan. Aviadom, sexism. No signs, no cameras, and it was always locked. They called it the cage. Inside that room was where the real work happened. Not fixing cars, but reinventing them. There were industrial VIN stamps, precision welding equipment, and a workstation used entirely for making fake paperwork. Ownership papers, vintage build sheets, and dealer receipts that looked so real that even experienced collectors couldn't tell they were fake. One former employee said it looked more like a forgery lab than a car shop. This wasn't something Rawlings just stumbled into by accident, it was planned out. The prosecution revealed that this secret area had been working for at least 6 years, based on internal emails, bills for specialized equipment, and security camera footage from nearby businesses that showed parts being delivered secretly through side doors. Rawlings was the only person who had a master key to get in, and while Fast and Loud was being filmed in one half of the garage, the real illegal business was happening in the shadows. What shocked investigators wasn't just the operation itself. It was how big it was. Not only were VIN numbers being switched, but complete identities were being built from nothing. Cars weren't just being restored, they were being reborn as rare cars. When one employee tried to raise concerns about what was happening, Rawlings supposedly told him, "If you can't handle this part of the business, you're in the wrong game." That employee quit his job shortly after, but it wasn't until the DOJ stepped in that his story finally came out into the light. And it matched perfectly with the paper trail that prosecutors were building. The turning point came with a single sale. A 1967 Shelby GT 500, which was Rawlings's crown jewel, meaning his best car, was sold to a European collector for $1.2 million. It was a sale that had been promoted online, talked about in interviews, and celebrated on Fast and Loud. Rawlings called it the holy grail of muscle cars, meaning the most special one. But there was one big problem. It wasn't a GT 500. Wasn't even close to being one. When the buyer tried to get insurance for the car through a European insurance broker, questions started coming up. The VIN failed the authenticity check. The build sheet looked wrong. Experts traced the frame and discovered that the car was actually just a standard 1967 Mustang. It was restored nicely, yes, but it was worth less than $200,000. The collector, who was shocked and felt betrayed, started recording video messages. He couldn't fly in to be at the trial because he was sick, but his recorded statement was played in full for the jury to watch. In it, he talked about his admiration for Rawlings, how he had followed Gas Monkey for years, and how he trusted that the man who built an empire based on passion would never trick someone like him. "I believed in Richard," he said, holding up the original purchase agreement paper. "Now I see he was acting the whole time." That emotional moment hit hard, but the prosecutors didn't stop there. They played recordings of voicemails. Walls had left messages for the buyer, promising that the car was authentic, using phrases like, "100% verified from my private network," and "I'd never stake my name on a fake car." But that's exactly what he had done. The Shelby sale made the wire fraud charges solid. It crossed country borders, involved fake documents, and showed that he meant to do it. And it was the moment that broke the illusion completely, not just for the court, but for Rawlings's entire global fan base around the world. The con wasn't just technical and about paperwork, it was personal and hurt people's feelings. What made Richard Rawlings's crime so powerful and so effective wasn't how good the fake documents jury to watch. In them, Rawlings brags about finding rare cars, calls his deals miracles, and shows off paperwork like it's the complete truth. When shown right next to expert testimony about VIN number problems and fake documents, the message became crystal clear. The show was part of the scam and the trick. In one episode, Rawlings holds up a build sheet claiming it came from the original owner of the car. In court, that same sheet was proven to be a fake document, created using a template found in the backroom printer that was taken during the raid. His celebrity status wasn't just a side effect of the fraud, it was a weapon that made it all work so well. Buyers trusted him because they saw him on TV every week. They saw the cars before and after he worked on them. They saw the passion, the energy, and the deals being made. But what they didn't see was the manipulation happening behind the scenes, the setups, the scripted finds that were planned ahead of time, and the cars staged just for drama and TV ratings. The courtroom quickly realized that Rawlings didn't just build fake cars, he built a fake reality show. And when you control the story that people see, you can sell anything to anyone, even a complete lie. The courtroom testimony didn't just destroy Richard Rawlings's reputation, it sent shockwaves through the entire automotive world and car industry. Within just hours of the verdict being announced, the effects began spreading across the industry like ripples in water. Major auction houses like Barrett-Jackson and Mickham released emergency statements announcing internal investigations into any cars previously sold through Gas Monkey Garage. They weren't taking any chances with their reputations. Cars that were once considered crown jewels and super valuable were now under suspicion and being questioned. Private collectors who once bragged about owning a Gas Monkey original car suddenly went quiet and stopped talking. Some demanded their money back as refunds. Others quietly pulled their cars from upcoming auctions so nobody would see them. A few contacted law enforcement directly because they suspected they too had been tricked and fooled. Insurance companies got involved next in the scandal. High-value policyholders were flagged in the system. Claims were frozen and stopped. Cars were recalled for reappraisal, which means checking their value again. One executive at a major insurance company called the scandal the largest classic car authenticity collapse of the last 25 years. Then came Discovery Channel. The network, which was blindsided by the federal charges and didn't see it coming, wasted no time at all. Within 72 hours of the conviction, Discovery Channel officially cut all ties with Richard Rawlings. All fast and loud episodes were removed from streaming platforms, where people watch shows online. Spexism spin-off deals for other shows were cancelled immediately. Contract negotiations with other Gas Monkey personalities were suspended indefinitely, meaning stopped for who knows how long. Rawlings's merchandise line, which was once a multi-million-dollar business selling t-shirts and hats, was pulled from store shelves. Online marketplaces began banning official Gas Monkey memorabilia because they were worried about potential lawsuits from angry customers. Sponsors fled and ran away. Advertisers vanished and disappeared. Collaborators who once showed off their connections to Rawlings now issued cold, rehearsed statements saying, "We were unaware of any illegal activity happening." In a matter of just days, the empire that Richard Rawlings spent decades building was turned to dust. He wasn't just cancelled from TV, he was erased from existence. The trial lasted 3 weeks from start to finish. The prosecution laid out a mountain of evidence, which included altered VIN numbers, fake records, expert testimony, and a paper trail that led directly to Rawlings's signature on documents. The defense lawyers tried to frame him as a passionate but careless businessman who was too trusting of others, not a criminal. But that story didn't stick with the jury. After only 6 hours of thinking about it and discussing, the jury came back with their decision, which was guilty on all 18 counts of crimes. Wire fraud, mail. His body went limp like he had no bones. Gasps echoed through the room from everyone watching. His ex-wife screamed out loud. Dennis Collins, who looked visibly shaken and upset, tried to reach him to help. But he was blocked by US Marshals, who are like special police. EMTs, which are emergency medical workers, stormed into the room, giving him oxygen to breathe and checking his vital signs to see if he was okay. It took 7 whole minutes before Rawlings finally moved even a little bit, and even then he was barely conscious, really pale, covered in sweat, and unable to walk on his own. He was wheeled out of the courtroom, strapped to a stretcher like a hospital bed on wheels. There was no mugshot taken, no defiance or fighting back, only a mask on his face to help him breathe, and the unmistakable look of a man who had lost absolutely everything he ever had. The courtroom that once saw him as a rock star and celebrity now saw him for what he really was, a fallen titan who had crashed hard. Richard Rawlings once lived his life like a rock star on tour. He flipped cars for profit, built an empire from nothing, and turned grease-stained metal into pure gold and money. He had fans who loved him, he had fame and recognition, he had fire and passion.